Hello, it is Siddig. Tonight, someday, I'm going to talk about graphing, not graphing, shizo pizo, writing equations of lines. Now, this is a topic that is helpful in an Algebra 1 class. It is helpful in a geometry class. It is helpful in an Algebra 2 class. It can be helpful in a pre-calc class. So this is one of those things that repeats itself kind of as you go through the years. When you first learn writing the equation of a line, I'm shortening the equation to EQN. You normally work with this form, which is slope-intercept. The reason it's called slope-intercept is because math people were beautiful but not creative. This is the intercept, this is the slope. It's a totally fine form. If it's a form you prefer, then you can always plug in your pieces, solve for your intercept. I don't like it as well because you get to the end and then you actually have another step to do. And I found with students that what they'll do is they'll solve perfectly down to B and then they'll stop because they think they're finished. And you're not, because what has to happen is you solve for B and then you have to get back here. So my recommendation is to use point slope, which is also very cleverly named because it's made of a point, x1, y1, and a slope. It's weird. I feel like half the time in math, things are literally like, this is point slope because it has point and slope. And then other times you name things and you're like, why is it even named that? That doesn't make sense. But that's because math is from so many different cultures and languages. I'm going to use this form. And I think in this one I'm just going to talk about if you have 2 points. Because that's, besides parallel perpendicular, which I can do a video on if people want, but it's kind of the most intensive of writing an equation that you're going to see. So I'm going to leave slope-intercept up there, but you might see something like write the equation of a line passing through, and they'll give you a couple of points. I'm trying to decide if I want this to work nicely or not. I'll do that and we'll see how this works for me. This might give me 1. So if you're fine with multiplying through by 1, then... all right, so the first thing that I always look for is I always look for slope. And the reason that I always look for slope, it's weird. You graph slope second. But the reason that I always look for slope in a line first is because either you're going to have to actually use a formula to find slope, or maybe it's an equation where they're asking you to find a parallel or a perpendicular where you have to contemplate slope. So, right, parallel slopes have matching slopes, right? Stalker, every time this one moves the same to get close. Perpendicular is when you do inverse reciprocals. So I think slope is kind of the key to doing this because it's usually the hardest step of the problem. So slope, we don't have it, we're going to find it. There is a catchy song that I did not invent, set to Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And it's not my favorite because it's too long. But it goes, he's taking y2, subtracting y1. Soon he will find the rise over run. Santa Claus is finding the slope. And then you do that same thing with x. Now the way I remember is y's go on top. Y's go on top because it goes with rise, y's and rise. And you have to rise before you can run. So when you're graphing, you think of it as rise and run. I'm not graphing, I'm just writing an equation, so I just need to input. You pick your favorite point and label it. It does not matter which point you pick first, as long as you make sure to label them as x and y. All right, if you want a whole rigmarole on why the order doesn't matter, I can show you that later in a different video with graphing.
Tell the Christmas marathon.
A Christmas marathon, that sounds awesome. Right? You gonna go finish watching? You can watch whatever's next. Sorry. Christmas marathons are very exciting. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna replace my y2 and my y1 with my y2 and my y1, and then I'm gonna replace my x2 and my x1 with the numbers x2 and x1. Okay, so I don't need the rise over run anymore because I'm not graphing this. So I'm gonna get 12 minus 4 over 6 minus negative 2. Notice it has a minus stuck in the formula, so it could affect the sign of your numbers. Oh, I did. I totally gave myself 1 as a slope. 12 minus 4 is 8. 6 minus -2 is 8. So my slope is 1. Okay?
Can I have another butt voice?
Dad will be in charge of that. Okay. Sorry, it's dinner time at our house for the boys. So now that I have my slope, I'm going to go ahead and use a point. So step 2 is to label your point. And the nice thing about this, once again, is you can use either of these 2 points. I'm going to use this one because it's already labeled as x1, y1, and then I'm going to use my slope. So I have the point -2, 4, which is x1, y1. My step 3 then is to go ahead and use the formula properly. Now, if I was doing parallel or perpendicular, I would think about that at step 1, but I'd also write it into my formula here so that I remember for myself that I need a parallel or a perpendicular slope. Now, I'm obviously out of space, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to erase kind of this area here. We have my slope. I'm going to leave the formula so you can see that I'm going to put it into point slope, but it's going to come out in slope intercept. All right, so y minus y1. This one doesn't have a clever song. At least I've never found one. So if you have a good song, let me know. Then I'm going to do y minus y1. So y minus 4 equals, and my slope is 1. That's what I found in the first step. X minus -2. Once again, because of the minus stuck in the formula, I'm going to get sign changes. So that +4 goes negative, and that -2 is going to go positive. Now I distribute my slope. Now I cheated and I went for an easy slope. But if it's a number, you still just multiply it in. So 1 times x is 1x. 1 times 2 is 2. Now I'm almost finished. I want it to look like this, so I'm going to move the 4 by adding it to each side. And that gives me y equals 1x plus 6. And that's the equation of the line that passes through the points -2, 4, 12, 6. No, 6, 12. So it's not really a hard process. And the thing is you would do the same if they gave you the point and a slope. You would do the same if they gave you 2 points like this. You would do the same if they asked for parallel, if they asked for perpendicular. The only time you don't use point slope or it's not as, it's kind of a slightly, it's not a harder method, but you might not want to use it, is when they already hand you the intercept. But notice I started with 2 points. I used my slope, my point, put them in point slope, and I still came up with the y equals mx plus b of a line. Now, the one thing I don't like about YouTube, besides the fact that it takes forever to upload videos, is it's frustrating because I know that you guys wanted to see this, but it's also like, I don't know which part necessarily was a struggle for you. So if there was something here that you're like, okay, Miss City, you did that, and I didn't really get it, you need to let me know that. So, I know this is going to be on YouTube, but for anybody watching this tonight that has a final with me tomorrow, if you have specific questions, you can come over during first or second tomorrow if your teacher will let you, or you can catch me during lunchtime if that works for you, and you can ask me specifics about this. So it's kind of like the same thing with like Cramer's rule or the inverse, or piecewise functions. I can go through the whole thing, but if you and I aren't speaking the same language, then we need to talk like actual human beings and not just through the interweb. All right, so hopefully this helped with writing the equation of a line. Like I said, there are multiple ways to do this, and I can post more if you want it. But if you have a comment, the boys like to say comment below. You can subscribe to my channel. I almost subscribed to my video. And you can like this video. I think that you can pull up your liked videos and then be like, oh, this is a liked video. I'm going to watch how to graph or how to write the equation of a line again because I love it so much. But yeah, you don't have to if you don't want to. Whatever. Have a good night.